Napakalaking responsibilidad ang nakaatang sa sinumang uupo bilang Pangulo ng Pilipinas. Hindi lang iisang tahanan, barangay o lungsod ang kanyang sakop, kundi ang buong bansa at ang buong sambayanang Pilipino. Kaya nararapat na suriing mabuti ang kakayahan ng mga lider na nais maupo bilang President of the Republic of the Philippines. Kaya naman ikaw, sa paparating na 2022 elections ngayong Mayo, kilala mo na ba kung sino ang iboboto mo? Alam mo na ba ang kanyang mga plataporma at plano kung sakaling mahalal siyang Pangulo? Dito sa ating programa kung saan layunin namin ang makapaghatid ng impormasyong dapat ninyong malaman, ay tutulungan namin kayong mas makilala at maunawaan ang mga plataporma ng bawat presidentiable. Ako po si PCOO Undersecretary and FOI Program Director Chris Ablan. At ito ang Talakayan with the 2022 Presidentiables FOI sa Radyo version 3.0 Special Series. Nagpapasalamat kami sa ating mga presidentiables na naglaan ng oras para makapanayam tayo ngayong gabi at matulungan ang taong bayan mas makilala pa sila ng lubusan bago ang eleksyon. Kaya naman, huwag na natin patagalin pa. Simulan na natin ang pagkilala at pagkilatis sa ating mga kandidato. Para sa gabing ito, kilalanin natin at alamin kung sino ang una nating panauhin. Makasama natin ngayong gabi para ilahad ang kanyang plataporma at plano kung sakaling mahalal bilang Pangulo ng Pilipinas. Sabay-sabay po natin i-welcome si 2022 Presidentiable Sir and Spokesperson Ernesto Abella. Magandang gabi po at salamat sa pagpapaunlak ninyo na maging bahagi ng Talakayan with the 2022 Presidentiables FOI sa Radyo version 3.0. Bago po tayo magsimula, nais kong ipaalam sa inyo na naghanda ng 11 katanungan ang aming team tungkol sa iba't ibang aspetong bumubuo sa ating bansa. Mayroon po kayong 3 minuto para sagutin ang bawat katanungan. Spokes Ernie, handa ka na ba?
Handa na, Yusek.
To start with, para mas makilala po kayo ng taong bayan, can you briefly introduce yourself to us? Sino po ba si Ernesto Abella?
Okay, simula po tayo sa mga obvious, no? Una-una po ay ako po ay dati-rating undersecretary sa DFA at saka naging officer in charge din po ako sa UNESCO. Pero bago po noon ay tayo po yung kauna-unahang spokesperson ni President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Ang advocacy ako po ay basically education, aside from education, micro, small and medium enterprises, organic farming at saka basically the well-being of the Filipino people. So yun po.
Ayan. Para sa ating mga listeners at viewers, no, si Spokes Abella ay naging boss ko sa PCOO bilang kanyang deputy during those days, di po ba? Maraming salamat po, Spokes Ernie. Dito po sa aming programang FOI sa radyo ay layunin po namin mabigyan ang ating mamamayan ng pagkakataon na mas makilala po kayo at iba pang mga presidential candidates at malaman ang inyong mga plataporma ngayong papalapit na po ang ating eleksyon. Ako po ay magtatanong sa inyo ng inyong opinion o stand tungkol sa mga issue sa tingin namin ay mahalaga sa ating mga kababayan, lalong-lalo na po sa pagpapatakbo ng ating bansa. Kaya naman po, umpisa na natin ang ating talakayan. Dumako po tayo sa usaping human rights. Dito po sa ating bansa, we face several issues involving human rights. Ilang beses nang na-question ang PIDEA and police operations dahil sa patuloy na paglobo ng mga kaso ng mga di umano killings during drug operations sa bansa. Base na mismo sa datos ng Philippine National Police noong October 2020 ay tumaas po ng 7,987 ang death toll ng anti-drug operations sa Pilipinas. Isa pang usapin ang pagbabalik po ng death penalty na siya namang tinututulan ng human rights advocates. Spokes Ernie, what is your stand on these matters? Ano po ang inyong personal na definition ng human rights? Go ahead po.
Okay. Ang human rights po para sa akin ay yung sinasabi natin, yung kabuuan ng well-being ng isang tao. Yung kanyang freedom to express himself, freedom to travel, freedom of religion, freedom of the exercise of his yung kanyang mga ninanais na at mga hinahangad sa buhay. Dapat po hindi hinahadlangan yon at dapat masuportahan ng gobyerno para makamit niya ang kanyang mga adhikain sa buhay. Ngayon naman po, patungkol sa yung mga human rights violations, ay dapat po ito ay matignan at lalong-lalo na sa lalong madaling panahon. Ang alam po din naman natin kasi na kadalasan ay ang hadlang talaga sa pagkamit ng tinatawag natin na social justice ay because overloaded din po yung ating mga korte. Tama ho ba? So ang isang proposal natin mangyari man ay na madagdagan po natin ang ating mga law practitioners tsaka yung implementation of swift justice tsaka kung pwede po talagang para maging patas talaga, lumawak po yung ating capability in order to be able to serve these people promptly and justly.
Alright. Maraming salamat po, Spokes Ernie. Let us proceed with the Build program of government. Sa kabila po ng pandemya, pinagpatuloy po ng pamahalaan ang mga proyekto under the Build program ng DPWH, among others. Some of which are the NLEX-SLEX Connector Road and the Bicol International Airport Development. May ilan sa mga kababayan natin ang nagpahayag ng kanilang pagtutol dito dahil maari umanong ituon na lamang ang budget sa COVID-19 response efforts tulad ng mass testing, procurement of vaccines, or financial assistance sa mga nawalan ng trabaho dahil sa pandemya. Spokes Ernie, are you in favor sa pagpapatuloy po ng mga programa sa ilalim ng Build program kahit na patuloy pa rin nating hinaharap ang COVID-19?
Opo, kailangan po kasi, unang-una naman, having been exposed to the way government works, no, ay yung mga budget for example, for build, hindi po pwede ililipat lang yan para magamit na para sa ibang mga proyekto, kundi otherwise makokowa sila, no, for misuse of funds. Pero iba din naman po kasi ang sourcing para sa COVID-19. Meron talagang funds para dyan, iba rin po talaga yung para sa build. Now, bakit po mahalaga na ipagpatuloy po yung sa build? Dahilan it's a source of revenue. It's a source of not revenue, it's a source of wages for people, so people can work, people can you can have a daily source of daily living. So mahalaga po yan, hindi po dapat putulin yon because para po natin sinabi na we get from Peter to save Paul. Hindi po, we need to serve both Peter and Paul, no, so yung funding po para doon sa build, wag po natin tanggalin yon dahil nakakatulong talaga sa tao yon, at yung sourcing po para sa COVID-19 ay tuloy-tuloy din po yun. Pero iba po ang panggagalingan yon. Pero iisang bulsa sa bulsa rin ng gobyerno. Pero wag pong wag pong ipaghalo yung dalawa dahil sa pareho po sila nagsisilbi ng kanilang purpose. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po, Spokes Ernie. Kaugnay naman po sa nakaraang katanungan ko, let's talk about the COVID-19 response. Patuloy pa rin nating hinaharap ang pandemya dala ng COVID-19. Base po sa datos na handog ng John Hopkins COVID-19 dashboard, mahigit na 400 million sa buong mundo ang kabuang kaso ng COVID at halos 6 million ang bilang ng mga namatay. Naniniwala po ba kayo sa sinasabi ng ilan na we should learn to live with COVID-19 virus? How will you balance the efforts to address the pandemic and at the same time, make sure na hindi napapabayaan ang ating ekonomiya? Kung kayo po ay nasa katayuan ng ating kasalukuyang Pangulo, ano po ang gagawin ninyo?
Unang-una po, we need to be able to address the whole matter of COVID in terms of yung perspective, no. Magkaroon po tayo kasi ang nangyayari, we have been gripped by fear. Pero katulad po yung mga datos no, kung ilan na nagka-COVID, ilan ang ganito. I believe na dapat magbago po yung ating pagkukolekta ng datos tungkol sa COVID, no. Hindi naniniwala ako na ang approach natin hindi dapat so ilang kaso na ngayon, tumaas ba. Ang mahalaga po yung nagkaroon ng adverse reactions saka yung yung mortality rates. Kasi makikita natin mas mababa po talaga siya. Pangalawa, I would approach it this way, no. I would go for the opening already of the reopening, of course gradual reopening of our societies so that we can have more face-to-face encounters, no. Una-una, dahilan sa most of our people are hindi naman corporate people, most of our people talagang ang kanilang pag pinagkakitaan ay mga micro, small and medium enterprises na kung saan kailangan makipagsalamuha sa tao talaga. So maliban dyan, so kailangan magharap sila. Ang approach po naman natin, hindi na po yung general lockdowns, kundi kung po pwede po talaga yung tinatawag ng iba granular, but I would much rather call it precision lockdowns. Una-una siguro marami tayong random testing, tuloy-tuloy po yung random testing natin, tsaka traces para alam natin, makikita natin kung saan talaga tumataas, yung talaga may adverse reaction, hindi lang dahil nagka-COVID sila, pero kung meron talaga mga adverse reactions, let's say, yung nagkakasakit, yung talaga na-hospitalize, yun ang dapat binibilang na hospitalize in ICU o kaya may namamatay. Pag ano naman po, kahit na merong nagka-COVID, pero wala namang they're able to handle it, then we should just continue going on forward. I would say, ang isang tanong nyo kasi kung am I open to living with it? Yes. Unang-una yata mukhang may cycle na yata mga pandemya, no? So mukhang pababa na yung cycle and we need to just learn to live with it. Nandiyan siya. So we need to just support our own people, make sure that they're healthy, make sure that they have a healthy lifestyle, bigyan po na, make sure, I would encourage the boosting of the immune system para yung mga tao ay tuloy-tuloy, they can face life, they can go out, have a happy life, begin to live life again, a full and rich life. Yun po.
Alright, maraming salamat po, Spokes Ernie. Let's go to question number 4. Pag-usapan naman natin ang lagay ng MSME sa ating bansa. You mentioned this earlier in your previous answer. Micro, small, and medium enterprises or MSMEs comprise 99% of business establishments in the Philippines and employ about 63% of the country's workforce. During the second quarter of 2020, almost 4 months after the community quarantines were put in place, the country's GDP sank to 16.5% as the Philippines experienced recession due to the COVID-19 pandemic. To address the adverse impacts of COVID-19, the MSME started to implement adaptive measures such as shifting to the use of online platforms and allowing employees to work from home. However, despite adaptive measures, the majority of MSMEs still need assistance to recover from their losses. Kung ma-elect po kayo bilang Pangulo, may plano po ba ano po ba ang plano ninyo para sa MSMEs bilang malaki rin po ang papel ng kanilang ginagampanan when it comes to employment and economic development?
Thank you for the question, Yusek, no? Ang laki po talaga ng suporta ng MSME sa ating sa gobyerno, no? I don't have the exact figures right now, pero isa siyang haligi ng ating ekonomiya. Now, I have a two-track solution for that. Yung isa, mamaya ko na pag-uusapan. Yung patungkol pero yung ating po mga MSMEs, usually yung kailangan tulong nila hindi yung iniisip natin. Like for example, ang suggestion ko talaga, kailangan umupo tayo with representatives of MSMEs and find out what they think they really need. Nung na-discoveryhan ko halfway to the pandemic ay yung mga hinaing pala ng mga MSMEs, hindi naman sa ang kailangan lang nila, for example, kung pwede wag muna silang kubrahin, kung pwede meron lang mga yung wag muna lang yung mga arkila nila, kung pwede lang muna, kung pwede may konting ang tawag yan, delay, kung pwede hindi nilang babayaran agad, o kaya kailangan nila ng konting tulong para makapagbayad sila ng mga utang nila. So, hindi naman ganun kalaki. I mean, pero they just need an extra help because ang ating mga tao, very resilient, kayang-kaya nilang harapin to. Kailangan lang na on our part, proactive din yung support natin sa kanila, maibigay natin talagang kailangan nila, yung nape-perceive nila ang kailangan nila. Pangalawa ay gusto ko indicate sa agro-industry yung MSMEs, but time's up. So, yun.
Alright. Next po, Spokes Ernie, pag-usapan natin ang tungkol sa Bangsamoro Organic Law. Matapos ang dalawang dekadang negosasyon sa pagitan ng ating gobyerno at ang pinakamalaking insurgent group na sa Muslim Mindanao, ang Moro Islamic Liberation Front or MILF, pinirmahan po ni President Duterte ang Bangsamoro Organic Law noong July 26, 2018. May ilang issue na hinaharap ang batas, katulad na lamang ng oposisyon mula sa ilang lokal na grupo. Pangamba sa kapasidad ng Muslim Mindanao at MILF na maipatupad ang mga pangangailangan kalakip ng BOL. Pati na rin ang pagpapanatili ng suporta mula sa national government para sa BOL. Now, if elected as president, how will you address the challenges surrounding the implementation of the Bangsamoro Organic Law?
Thank you for asking that, Yusek Chris. No, that's a very crucial part and part of my flagship platform. Unang-una, we need to approach the whole thing in a holistic way. Na dapat hindi lang we don't approach it na terrorism and we don't approach this as a military problem. We need to approach it as a holistic situation. Na kung saan a large part of it, really almost 100% of the problem there is because of economic situation. Kung titingnan kasi natin ang poverty level map, makikita natin ang pinakamahirap talaga sa buong Pilipinas ay ang Mindanao. Especially kung titingnan natin ang red shaded area, and I don't mean red as in a political color, but I mean red as in a tawag dito economic situation, ang talagang nasa peligro ang nasa Mindanao. So ang ano ko po dyan is we will develop the agro industry, the agricultural programs in Mindanao and create what do you call it, and ang ating goal is to make agriculture, especially in Mindanao, something very, very inclusive at kung saan maging maging isang mega industry na kung saan it will benefit all. No, like for example, especially yung mga maliliit na communities, gusto natin ipagdikit, no? So they can be agricultural communities, they can have research, development, and the marketing and so forth. They can also have renewable energy, kalakip dyan, kasama na lahat dyan. In other words, what you'd like to do is make sure that the actual needs of the community are met. Aside from that, for example, one of the things that we're really looking forward to is yung tinatawag natin ng mga renewable energy na kung saan yung mga barangay can have their own little microgrids na magkaroon sila ng kuryente, magkaroon sila ng access to internet, at pag pinalad sila, sinuwerte sila, pwede ba sila magbenta ng kanilang extra energy back to the national grid. So ito po, ang approach talaga natin dyan is to make sure that yung matugunan yung kanilang matugunan ang mga hinaharap nila. Tandaan natin that it's 23 to 26 million Filipinos who are below poverty level, and 12.5 million of that are go to bed hungry at night. Go to bed every day, gutom. And a lot of that, the specific number, a lot of that are in Mindanao. So kung pwede matulungan natin yan para we are also saving the next generation. Can you imagine? Kasi pag malnourished ang kabataan, we will not have a bright generation if kung hindi na and if we don't have that kind of capability, ay talagang magpapatuloy ang ating kahirapan. So that is how we want to approach the whole thing. We want to approach it holistically and specifically addressing addressing the economic situation.
All right. Spokes Ernie, we still have 90 seconds po dun sa MSME question. You mentioned a second point. We'd like you to finish it po by you have 90 seconds po for your second point on the MSMEs.
Kasama yan kasama sa yung ating agriculture industry. What we want to make agriculture a mega industry. Meaning to say, we want to serve upstream yung magmula research, pag-develop ng seeds all the way to the and then hanggang sa pagbebenta, no. Doon naman sa pagbebenta, we want to provide our farmers, small medium and farm enterprise, we want to develop them also into meron silang tinatawag na agriculture centers. But what we'd like to do is make sure that all our farmers have their land, have their property, at saka yung mga we can treat them as small entrepreneurs. In fact, what we'd like to do is imbis na nagpo-problema sila doon sa kanilang CLOAS, hindi lang magamit yung kanilang lupa, ay kung pwede mag-debt condonation na lang tayo. We think of debt condonation so that the property is there, they can do whatever it is, just as long as they will still invest in agriculture. So that ang approach natin sa kanila para sila micro, small, and medium enterprises, and pwede sila mag-access ng financing, pwede sila mag-access ng loans, pwede sila mag-access ng mga mentoring programs and all that, and also assistance in terms of being able to sell the products. The other thing that we'd like to do is, for example, yung mga excess products, let's say it's either high value crop or what, yung pwede sila magkaning, o kaya pag they're in the fishing maritime industry, pwede natin sila ma-assist in being able to package the products that you can sell abroad. Kailangan po na maging mas entrepreneurial ang approach natin, not only for the micro, small, and medium enterprises, but yung gobyerno mismo needs an entrepreneurial attitude in supporting our MSMEs.
All right. Spokes Ernie, the issue on the West Philippine Sea is one of our major foreign policy concerns. As someone who could be the chief architect of the Philippine foreign policy, we want to know your plans on this matter, so let us proceed. Matagal nang nanalo ang Pilipinas sa International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, pero hanggang sa ngayon ay patuloy pa rin ang bansang China sa pag-angkin ng ilang bahagi ng West Philippine Sea. Patuloy silang nagtatayo ng mga istruktura tulad ng military bases at binubugaw ang mga mangingisda sa loob ng ating exclusive economic zone. Para maprotektahan po ang ating territorial integrity pati na rin ang mga kababayan nating mangingisda, what steps would your administration take upang masiguro ang ating karapatan sa EEZ?
Okay, regarding that, linawin natin, ang talaga napanalunan natin were our sovereign economic rights, not sovereignty over territory. Tama ba ako? Mukhang malinaw, dapat malinaw yan. Hindi natin angkin yung lugar. Meron tayong mga kasama dyan. So ang suggestion, meron po ibang nangingisda dyan, hindi lang po China. Ngayon yung sa pagkakaintindi ko po, yung China, hindi naman sila nagbibuild ng panibago, pero yung nakuha nila, doon sila yun ang kanilang pinapaigting. Yung kanilang mga natayuan na ng mga istruktura nila. Hindi sila nagdadagdag. Now, regarding the fishing rights, kung po pwede po talaga, ay isabay natin yan sa ating COC, sa Code of Conduct, na kung for example, ASEAN +1 o kaya tayo mismo. Pero mas maganda po sana talaga kung meron tayong meron po tayong dialogo na kung saan kausapin natin sila na kumbaga, meron tayong parity rights, kumbaga, pwede kayo mangingisda rin kami dyan, and sabay-sabay tayong kumita. What we really need at this point talaga is a wise exercise of diplomacy. Diplomacy is basically getting what we want without using arms. So kung pwede gamitin natin ating persuasive powers, at kailangan po tayo, ang isa po talagang, and this is somehow to do with it, kung pwede talaga ipaigtingin din natin yung ating pagmamahal sa bayan, na kung saan hindi lang po utak pulbura tayo, pero kundi alam natin kung saan patutungo ang Pilipinas, na kung saan gusto natin talagang umusad at mag-develop, pero at the same time we need to be able to know how to handle our neighbors properly, and that's one of the things we like to do, is to continue to be able to engage, especially in trade and economic activities sa ating mga kapitbahay.
Alright. Salamat po, Spokes Ernie. Dumako naman po tayo sa isa sa pinakamahalagang bagay na gustong malaman ng taong bayan. Bawat presidential candidate ay may kanya-kanyang plataforma na nais bigyang prioridad kapag nahalal bilang Pangulo ng Pilipinas. In your case, if elected president, how will you spend the annual budget for the next 6 years? Can you briefly share to us what will be your priorities in budget allocation?
All right. I would not divert too far from the current administration. Ang nakikita ko, mahalaga talaga ang continuity. Unang-una, let me just let me say again. Ano yung in brief, ano ba yung programa ng current administration natin? Masasummarize in 3 things. Number 1, inclusive prosperity. Pangalawa, orderly communities. Yung orderly communities, ibig sabihin anti-drug, anti-corruption, and anti-crime. Ang pangatlo is peaceful communities, no? So yung tatlong yun, bibigyan natin, like under peaceful communities, that means to say yung mga we can live properly with our yung mga ethnic the other ethnic minorities, we can live with them, IPs, the Muslim Mindanao, and also for example Cordillera region. Patuloy po natin to. Ipatuloy po natin, lalo na po yung inclusive prosperity. Now, meron po tayong dalawang dagdag na gusto kong magawa, no? Na gusto natin bigyan panahon. And it won't be too expensive, by the way. Number one talaga yung isang tinatawag na, the first pillar kasi ng ating plataforma is, ang tawag nito, patas na bayan, patas na lipunan, a just and equal society. What we'd like to do, for example, the way we usually run the government is run is we have government and then we have business here, and usually natural because they work so closely together. A lot of the policies, a lot of the laws and legislations kind of favor those who are economically powerful. But we'd like to be able to balance that by encouraging the participation of civil society, especially in the local government unit. As you very well know, local government code says that at least 25% of the operations of the local government of the Sanggunian must include the local communities. What? To look after law enforcement, to look after biddings, yung bids and awards, which is where corruption happens, which is where there's a lot of wastage. So dapat yung civil society talagang tutok. And civil society will also be our partner in making sure na ma-minimize natin ang corruption. You know, that along with education, along with health. So yun, gusto natin talaga a more active participation of civil society. Why? So that we can have a freer, a truly more balanced and more equitable society. The second one, of course, is gobyernong nararamdaman, and that's where we want to develop agriculture into a mega industry. And then, of course, thirdly is matatag na bayan, in which case we want to have a more resilient society and making sure that our young people become the foundation of a truly resilient nation. Why? Because they have a more confident national identity. I'd like to be able to speak on that if given the chance. Thank you.
All right. Sorry, that's our time, Spokes Ernie. Our next question naman po will be on NTF-ELCAC. Naging controversial po ang NTF-ELCAC dahil sa usapin na red tagging at iba pang isyung kaugnay rito. Kaya naman po pag-usapan natin itong EO-70. Former AFP Chief of Staff General Jose Faustino Jr. said that EO-70, or the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, is a game changer in the government's campaign against the New People's Army, or the NPA, as it has been successful in dismantling guerrilla fronts and has been doing a good job in the apprehension and capture of CTG leaders. Ever since EO-70 has been institutionalized in 2018, until November of 2021, about 4,075 members and supporters of the terrorist group have surrendered and withdrawn their support to the Communist Party of the Philippines, or the CPP, and the NPA. 198 communist terrorists were killed and 240 were either apprehended or captured in operations. Based on the data collected by the AFP, the surrenders outnumbered those who were recruited. If ever elected president, will you continue to implement EO-70, or are you for the abolition of the NTF-ELCAC? Sa tingin niyo po, Spokes Ernie, paano dapat tugunan ng isang presidente ang internal security concerns, particular na laban po sa mga grupong katulad ng NPA?
Alam mo, I agree with NTF-ELCAC in substance. Siguro yung yung just a style of implementing it. So I would be less dramatic maybe in talking about it, but we would continue. We would continue in substance, especially in reaching out to the local communities. Kasi ang effectivity niya nasa local community, hindi ba? Andun talaga siya. So ang mahalaga na nagre-reach out talaga siya. And besides, hindi ba? Ang naging naman niya, hindi naman red tagging ang pinaka-importante na trabaho niya. Ang pinaka-importante na katrabaho niya is to be able to extend, to be able to address the issues that are being raised, economics, social development, which should technically have been done a long time ago. So kumbaga in substance, I agree with it totally na yung pangangailangan ng mga tao, kaya sila umaangal, kaya sila nagagalit, kaya sila namumundok, ay matugunan. So we would continue with that, and we would continue, of course, in listening to them, conversation. This is where civil society comes in. This is where yung ating program, our National Volunteer Corps comes in. We would want to deploy, let's say, our young people within the ages of 18 and 35 to be able to be part of community building and nation building. Yung mga bata, for example, doon sa mga komunidad nila, kung pwede, punta sila ron, tulungan nila ng mastery in the mother tongue, hindi English-Inglesan, in the mother tongue. Kumbaga, matuto sila na writing, reading, arithmetic, and to provide an a role model of what it means to really be a kuya and ate. Kung pwede ba yung may pag-asa sa buhay, pwede pala akong umunlad na hindi ako kailangan mamundok. Pwede pala itong ganito. So, without going too much into that, I'd like to, one of the things we'd like to do is really alongside yung ginagawa ng NTF-ELCAC, yung economic arm nila, we'd like to be able to provide the National Volunteer Corps na tutulong, build ng community, replant yung mga denuded forest, and also teach them how to swim, to be able to provide the kind of inspiration. We want this to be an inspiration. We want to be able to inspire our own people, young people, to greater heights and not to take arms.
Alright, maraming salamat po, Spokes Ernie. Being a leader doesn't mean that you do all the work alone. We
Correct.
need an excellent team in order for a president to effectively govern.
Correct.
Kaya naman, mahalaga ang papel na ginagampanan ng cabinet members ng iyong administrasyon.
Correct.
Bawat isa sa kanila ay dapat na eksperto sa departamento kanilang pinamumunuan at nagsisilbi silang katuwang ng Pangulo sa pagpapatupad ng mga mandato, proyekto at programa sa ilalim ng kani-kanilang mga opisina. Nais malaman ng taong bayan kung paano ang magiging proseso sa pagpili ninyo ng inyong kabinete. Ano-ano ang mga kwalifikasyon at katangian na iyong hahanapin sa mga nais mong maging cabinet members. Spokes Ernie?
Salamat sa tanong na yan. Malapit sa puso ko yan, Yusek Chris, kasi andyan tayo sa gobyerno, especially sa for the longest time. Ngayon, ang unang-una, tawag dito, nakita ko na maraming karir na magagaling. They just haven't been given the right opportunity. So I would get a lot of them from the ranks of the career. I wouldn't mind having career people becoming secretaries just as long as they fulfill 3 qualifications. Number 1, integrity. Number 2, intelligence and skill. Number 3, energy. So number 1, integrity. Number 2, intelligence and skill. Number 3, yung energy. No, kasi mahalaga talaga yung integrity. Dapat they must be properly vetted. Na kung saan na talagang pwede sila mapagkatiwalaan. Pangalawa, kung pwede talaga yung, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean, for example, even in DOH, it's not necessarily a medical doctor that should stand there, but somebody with understanding of medicine, of course. But somebody who has, ang kailangan talaga ng secretary is great management skill, managerial skills, and of course, leadership, the kind of leadership energy that they need. But they need to be team players also. Hindi yung kanya-kanya sila, no? They need to be able to flow with our vision. And what is our vision? That after 6 years, the Philippines will become a more righteous, peaceful, and joyful nation. Isang makatarungan, mapayapa, at masayang bayan. In other words, ang gagawin natin, lahat ng ginagawa natin is number 1, to serve 4 bottom lines. People, planet, profit, and revenue, and then purpose. People, dapat yung ginagawa natin, hindi lang basta lalaki yung GDP natin, kundi talagang maayos ang well-being ng ating mga tao. Pangalawa, planet, it's not anything that you can ignore anymore. Hindi siya pawok na concern, no? It is a very real concern that we, for example, when for DNR, for example, even DA should be able to address these things in order na yung kumbaga sustainable tsaka people safe yung ating mga proyekto. Pangatlo, of course, we need to be able to have revenue. but revenue can come. Revenue will come, and then but just a question of being able to address it and make sure that the money goes into the right places. The pang-apat, of course, yung purpose. So we want people to come up in the ranks. There are 6,000 appointed positions, by the way. Na, and what we want is we want people to recommend. We can listen to them. They can send in their applications. Pero make sure lang that they qualify 3 ways. Number 1, integrity. Number 2, they have the intelligence and skill to manage, and people skills. And number 3, of course, is energy. Takes it
Alright.
vitamins.
Alright, sige po. Last 2 questions na po, Spokes Ernie. Section 7 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution emphasizes the right of the people to information on matters of public concern. And it has been almost or more than 30 years since the first FOI bill was filed in Congress. Alam naman po natin na ang transparent and accountable government is one of the pillars of good governance. Spokes Ernie, the entire executive branch implements FOI, including the national government agencies, government-owned and or controlled corporations, state universities and colleges, local water districts, as well as a number of local government units. If FOI works po in the executive branch, sa tingin niyo po ba, bakit hindi maipasa-pasa ang FOI bill sa Kongreso?
Well, obviously it's something that's needed, no, Yusek Chris. Pero kung gagawin natin, bakit hindi natin ituloy? So we'd like to sit down with, kasi unang-una, masyado na tayong matagal doon sa listahan ng Transparency International at lagi tayong perceived as one of the most corrupt nations on earth. I think it's very bad for our quote-unquote branding. It's very bad for our integrity. But aside from that, it's really very bad for our relationship with the people. There are 3 major problems that the society are, Yusek, we're really sitting on a social volcano. Huh? Number 1, ang laki ng agwat talaga sa mahirap at mayaman. Pangalawa, wala nang tiwala ang tao. So we need to be able to address that. And if only to be able to tell our brethren, yung mga ating kasamahan, our partners in the legislature, we need to do that. We need to be able to be transparent as possible. Otherwise we become a failed state or something worse happens. But we need to become more transparent.
In relation to FOI, kapag kayo po ay naluklok bilang Pangulo, paano nyo po may papatupad ang isang transparent and accountable government?
Well, aside from the fact that we need to assure our people that for example, that we can be trusted, no? We can be like, for example, ang isa talaga ang lagi namang concern ng tao yung corruption, yung basic anti-corruption. We could do some symbolic, aside from doing some symbolic things like having body cams for people who have face-to-face meetings with yung tumatanggap sila ng pera. But I believe ang isang talagang kailangan is paigtingin natin ang PCO o mismo yung ating local PTB and begin to announce, no? Yung ina-announce natin yung mga programa, yung more transparency, inilalabas natin yung mga budget, inilalabas natin ginagasto, saan pumupunta, ano yung resulta, and then let us continue to invite civil society to look into the local governments where the local projects are being made. And then the civil society can make reports over PCO, over PTB4 ba yun, over Radyo Pilipinas, over all these things. Dapat alam ng bayan na nilalabas natin. We cannot probably do everything at once, but we certainly can do some strategic and tactical communications.
All right, that's all the time that we have. Maraming salamat po, Spokes Abella, sa inyong pagpapaunlak sa aming imbitasyon. Hangad namin na maiparating ninyo ang inyong plataporma sa bawat Pilipino saan mang panig ng mundo. Hangad namin dito sa FOI sa radyo na maihatid ang mahalagang impormasyon dapat ninyong malaman. Katuwang ninyo po ang FOI-PMO sa pagkamit nito dahil naniniwala tayong information is always the key. Umpisa pa lamang ito ng pagkilatis natin sa mga kandidatong nagnanais makamit ang ating boto. Sa darating po na Biyernes, abangan ninyo po ang susunod nating makapanayam. Muli, ako po si Yusek at FOI Program Director Chris Ablan. Magsama-sama tayo ulit sa susunod na episode ng Talakayan with the 2022 Presidentiables FOI sa Radyo version 3.0.